Hi, third, fourth, and fifth grade leaders. We're preparing for January 19th in our series called Lost and Found. In this series, we've been talking about Daniel, and what we've learned from Daniel is to have a life of prayer. And because Daniel set the example for us, and especially in our lesson today, we're going to see ways that we can begin to trust God more and pray to Him more often in ways that we're learning to pray together. Your lesson today is Daniel in the lion's den. Daniel is still living in Babylon, and while he is in Babylon, the King Darius has become king. The kingdom is growing, and so he gets other people to help him lead different sections. And Daniel is such a good leader that Darius gives him all of Babylon to lead. And of course, all of the other leaders became very jealous of Daniel and looked for ways to get him in trouble. But Daniel, because he followed God, did what was right. And so the other leaders decided to trick him in a way. They went to Darius and encouraged Darius to pass a law that everyone for 30 days should pray only to King Darius. And they knew they would get Daniel because Daniel would pray to his God and to his God alone. And then they said that anybody who disobeys will be thrown into the lion's den. Well, Daniel knew that the law meant he was not allowed to pray to God, but he continued to pray to God 3 times a day like he'd always done. The leaders saw Daniel do this and went to tell King Darius what happened. And this made King Darius really upset because Daniel was a good leader and he liked Daniel and he didn't want to punish him. So he thought all day of a different way that he could save Daniel from the lions, but the men reminded him that he couldn't change the law, and so Darius orders Daniel to be thrown into the lion's den. But as he's doing it, he cries out to Daniel and he says, "May the God you serve save you." In fact, Darius was so upset by this, he didn't sleep or eat all night. He was the first person down there to check on Daniel in the morning, and it calls out to him and asks him if God had rescued him from the lions yet. God sent his angel to shut, and Daniel shouts back that God had sent an angel to shut the lion's mouth. I am safe. The king was so happy. He ordered for Daniel to be taken out of the lion's den and made a new law that everyone must respect God. He is the living God. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. King Darius God showed his power to rescue Daniel from the lions, but Daniel was just a small part of a much bigger story. God ultimately rescued us from a much bigger problem, sin and death, through his son, Jesus. Life is not always easy when we obey God, like we see in our story with Daniel, but God can rescue us. And God used Daniel to show his power to save. God used that as a way to show us that Jesus could save us as well. This is just kind of one of those stories that we can look back and say, oh, God was preparing us for what Jesus was going to go through. What we can know is that prayer can be a natural part of our daily life, just like it was for Daniel. We can pray when exciting things happen. We can pray when bad things happen. When we pray, we are showing God that we trust him and that we trust him with big things and small things. We can take everything to God and learn to trust him with all of those things. Your small group lesson today, you have a few different things. Now, during your social time, you're going to have a bucket full of all kinds of building materials and a couple different cards available to you. You've got a card like this that gives the instructions for what the kids are going to do. And then you also have a packet of cards that look like these. And these are different famous structures around the world. And what they're going to do is use as many of the objects as they have in their box to create one of these structures. And maybe you want to break them into smaller groups. There may be, I think there are 8 or 10 different structures, so you can let them build it together or they can build it separately. It's really up to you. These social activities are for you to build a relationship with a kid so that just like we're learning through prayer, we can begin to share big things with kids because we are beginning to gain their trust. Then your small group activity, you have a bag full of Jenga blocks, and you're just going to play a regular game of Jenga. And go ahead and just play through the game of Jenga until the tower falls. And then you can use your leader guide that has some really good discussion questions there as a part of it. And it says, how long do you think someone could play this game without knocking down the tower? Do you think it would be impossible to go on and on without knocking down the tower? Why or not? Why not? Today we heard about a man who faced a situation that seemed impossible too. How do you think you would have handled being in Daniel's place? As you are learning to pray, how could you make it part of everyday life like Daniel did? And then what you can do is share with kids what we've been giving them every week is kind of a different way that they can learn to pray. They don't have to do all of these as a way to pray, but what we're hoping is that one of these, either your prayer prompts or one of these or the cards that they got a couple weeks ago, one of these will stick as a way to help kids learn to pray to God so that they can start building that relationship with Him. So you can use this as a way to teach them a different way to pray if they would like to. And then your memory verse activity, you have some ping pong balls with the words of the memory verse stuck to them and some cups. And what you're going to do is one word at a time, you're going to pass a ping pong ball to a kid, and each kid gets a cup. So what you're going to do is put the ping pong ball in a cup, and they're going to pass their ping pong ball down and say whatever words are on their cup, are on their ping pong ball, until you until you're all out of ping pong balls and they filled up their bucket. So it's just a fun way to memorize together. It's one of those fun activities that we do to try to help kids memorize the story. Then you can pray using any of the prompts that you have available with your kids, and then send them home when their families are ready to pick them up. Thank you so much for leading. These papers can go home with the kids if they'd like to take these home as another way to think about praying together. I will see you guys soon. Thank you.